Hey everybody, it's Istebrak. Today I'll be doing a critique video on this form study. The person who painted this used my previous video to guide them through. Okay, so the main issues with this are that all of these are following a different light source. As you can see from the ones that I've done, um, I'll link them at the, or you'll see them at the, well, they were shown at the end of the last video, but I will try to remember to link them at the bottom of the description box, and maybe you can take a look. They all have a universal light source. So with this one, let's focus on just one right now. What I usually do with my form studies is I use the polygonal lasso tool, and I find the shape and I don't exit from the polygon lasso tool until I'm done, because it'll just sustain the shape. Now remember, form is all about the edges. We need some sharp edges in here, and form, it depends on the edges. It's the most important part of describing the form, because there are no lines to help us create edges and define the end of the matter, the end of the subject, where it stops existing. All we have are these edges to define them for us in a painting that doesn't use lines. So what I just did was I got the lasso tool, I found a basic shape around it, and what I'm doing right now is just sharpening these edges out. Okay. Right, so I'm sorry if I do go quiet for like sometimes, because this isn't a complete lesson video. It's a more of a, watch me do this type of video. So the most important things, you don't depend on these little cracks here to define the form for you. The most important things are the surface areas, defining the major faces of the shape, the major edges of the shape. Even before you start throwing in shadows. Now, the way I would do it is I throw in a base color first, as you might already have seen, and then I throw in the mid-tone color. And this highlight color is a bit too high for right now. You need to sort of tone it down a little bit, because if you do look at the studies that I have done, I don't use the highlight right away. The reason why is because not the entire area of that face isn't going to be lit. Only a certain area, the hot spot, where the light line is parallel with the surface area reflection line. And so the two lines of light are facing each other, and that's the area that is the most exposed. So, sorry, a second, I'm not wearing my glasses. Okay, nerd equipment on. So I'm just getting these basic things down. So remember, this whole part is facing away from the light. And the light, I'm sorry I didn't establish it. It's in my head right now. The light, let's say, is shining in from here. Let's get that tone. It's a bit high, but let's get that. This whole area here is facing away from this light. And so we're going to have to make sure this whole area stays dark. There are no areas. This is almost as light as this, and that's not possible. Remember that when you choose your lightest point, that should be a reference for everything else. So let me just darken this up so we can find a basic shape to work with. After you determine the basic shape, then you can start breaking up the larger parts of that shape into smaller parts to make the shape more intriguing. You shouldn't be trying to make the shape more intricate early on. It's like using the small brush first before anything else, before using your large brush. You need to define your large shapes, and then at the end you can start breaking down that shape. Okay. I'm defining these larger areas, and I'm really trying to figure out the kind of shape this is that you've designed here. Well, this darkness is a bit too high, so let's bring that down. Right, this area might be getting a little bit darker. And this area here is also a little bit darker. And jumping into the cracks too soon is can be a bit confusing later on, especially if you have to repaint an area and you have that detailed blemish on the face of the object. Like painting freckles in too early, you're gonna have to paint over them anyway, so just don't be too excited. You will get a chance to do all the detail you like, just not right now. At this stage, it's the most important stage because this is where you develop the real girth of the shape. It's important that you stay stable, you don't panic, you don't feel too much. Like, there is an anxiety stage in every painting when it's when it's early on, but it shouldn't be so much that it's overwhelming or you start to panic and start introducing smaller shapes just so that you can feel good about what you're painting. Don't panic too soon, it's not worth it. Okay, so trying to stabilize this shape here, which seems to be a bit wonky. Trying to get all of the sides and angles parallel. Give it a bit more of a geometric symmetry or something. Angle symmetries at least. And now I discover that if I straighten this area, this is what was confusing. This area had an edge, and yet this didn't have an edge. And so it seemed like it was going up. So if I straighten that part out and paint this whole face in this color, the face of the shape is more stabilized. The whole shape of the shape stabilized into a very consistent sort of look. Remember, large parts first and then break down the smaller parts, and I'll show you in a second how I do that. The next big problem of this shape, there are no set rules to make shapes, like you do with portraiture. Every shape is different, every shape has a different build. The only real issue with these shapes and these form studies is understanding the surface areas and the main shadows, the main light and the main shadow caused by that light, the core shadow. So I'm going to take this shadow down a little bit. It's a bit dark. If I take it down a notch, what will happen is I will have an opportunity to use the darks in areas that really need it, and what that does is it allows space for more form to show through. Remember, form is only created through edges and gradual tone. There is no real, let me re-lasso here. There are no lines to help you determine this form. All you have are shadows, light spots, and edges. That's all you have for form. Okay. Okay. Redefine the edge a little more. Select inverse to go back inside the shape. Control H to hide the lines. Now I'm just going to start sharpening up some of these edge points. I'll try my best not to lose the edge that I just created with the lasso tool, because I need that. I need that edge to stay sharp, which is something I do a lot with these form studies. And someone asked before in the comments what kind of opacity level I use. I don't mess with the flow, but the opacity varies depending on the stage I'm at. If I'm in the early stages, the opacity stays pretty much 100%. But as I progress into the painting, it can just go up to 100% or go down to 1% or 5% depending on what color I'm using or whatnot. Okay, so I need to lift this up. I'm just thinking like the vanishing points in my mind, just eyeballing the vanishing points in the perspective. Just trying to think about how to make this shape work. And this brush of mine has color dynamics in it sometimes, so I need to keep desaturating. Okay. So I'm just sculpting, really. It's really basic shapes that I try to work with. Areas that are the darkest, dark corners sometimes are the darkest area of that face. Sometimes the whole face of the shape, one side, isn't this one whole grayscale tone. It varies sometimes depending on the kind of angle it's at. So if it's, I'm going to add a little bit of a curve to this, like this. And this gives me an opportunity to mess around with the values that form this for me. Give it like a curved edge. And that what that will do is let me darken this corner here, and then I have that gradual tone and that intrigue. And you just keep sculpting with the brush. Lasso tool is your best friend in this scenario. Okay, so at this stage I feel bored with all these sides. This is too basic. The shape is too basic. Now it's time to break it up. And what I usually do to break it up, it's either I break the larger pieces into smaller pieces, or I introduce cracks or craters. And so let's do these craters. So one large bite out of it, and then gradual tone that bite. So it reads right away, right? It's almost a miracle. The reason why it reads right away is because I use the opposite of each. So I used the value for this, the light for this, drop tooled it and used it on the dark side, and then I got the dark side and used it on the middle side, and then I just merged and blended in, and then it looks like a crack. Do you see how easy it is to sculpt form? Because you just have to remember how shadows are cast. You don't have to outline the crater first before you make it look like a crater. The outline is only help, it's only a crutch. But you need to think about where the shadow is being cast, because you always have to keep the light source in mind. If the light source is not in mind, then you don't know where to cast these shadows. You don't know that it's just an inversion of the two shades that are already there. It's that simple. Okay, so I'm probably going to throw a crack into this. And the way I think about these cracks is that they're facing away from the light source. They're going to be dark. And what I do is I drop tool the crack color that I already found, and I just use it for the entirety of the break. I don't want to keep saying crack. The fissure, the fissure, I need a thesaurus. Somebody help me. Okay. So I'm just outlining. Remember, edges are important. When you find that you're painting and it's not reading, sharpen the edges a little bit and see if that reads for you. And always give it a moment or two to sink in, and then you'll see, oh crap, that reads good. Okay, on to the next thing. So more cracks here. It's a simple drop tool, a new color, or get some of the light source in there just to lighten the value, and then edge it out. I hope that because I can't zoom in because it's low quality, but I hope that the 1080p I've been recording on is helping you guys, because I've had some complaints about the 480p I've been recording. It's because the live stream, that's the way the live stream does it. Okay, probably some cracks in this. Got the opposite color on one side, and then threw it in, got the opposite color of the other side. Now for ones that are horizontal, it's very difficult because you have a side that might have a cast shadow on it. So what you have to watch out for is where that cast shadow is starting from. So again, keep your light source in mind. Okay. casting a shadow, very gentle shadow. It isn't even facing the light source. It's just a very like indirect cast shadow because the light source is not shining on it directly. The reason why I made this value the lightest is because it's looking up. And what I'm hoping for is that the light is traveling and is bouncing off walls. The light that is bouncing off a wall is bouncing off other shapes as well because it emanates. It doesn't just choose one lane and goes on it. Because then you're going to be like, okay, so which lane has it chosen? How do I know it's lighting up this face, not this face? Well, every light doesn't just bounce back. If it is against a wall, it emanates out of the wall, depending on where the light source is. So the reason why I lit this side up and didn't keep it shadowed is because I know that this is going to entertain some level of secondary light source. Because in my mind, I'm already imagining what happens to the light source after it bounces back. So I'm anticipating a secondary light source because the light, in my mind, the intensity of the light is causing a secondary light source to happen, or a that kind of secondary light source, that reflection. Okay, and probably a crack on this side, and I'll show you how I do the cracks on the 3/4 view. I just simply get the color of the outside layer and just bring it in, the outside background color. And what I do is I get the light source color because it might be facing, let me think about it actually a second. Yeah, it would be facing it, so it would get some of the light source. This is a bit bright, but I will be toning it down. I just need it to be that bright right now because all I have to do is move it down a notch and keep it, get it at the brightness that I need it at. And what I do at the very end of this whole session still doesn't look that right to me. I'm not sure. Is I think about cast shadows where the shape is casting shadows on itself. So one of these cast shadows would be over here. So the shape is casting a shadow in this area. Okay, so let me zoom out so you can see that. The shape is casting a shadow on sort of this area, just a touch. At least from my understanding of light source. It's probably completely wrong in the realist sense, the real physics of this whole system. But as long as you're following the principles of light source, you're not working with complete realism, but as long as you're following the principles, you're going to have that realism in check, because it's going to look like it's real, even if you have mistakes, even if the mistake is there and shadow might not be cast at that exact angle, you're still casting the shadow. The point is you're still thinking about cast shadows. So as long as there is a cast shadow, the form isn't really suffering that much. And this crack here needs to be pointing downward because we're looking at it top down. So I need to do some editing on that. It's going to look like a smile. Maybe I should leave it carved like that. I'll leave it carved. Okay. It's getting complicated. I do get those really difficult shapes. It's hard for me to imagine how, and sometimes I just have to sit there for a little bit or look away from the image for a little bit and then come back to it. And after that, I'm capable sort of taking on the form. And after I've sort of played around with the blemishes on the face of the shape, for cracks like this, you have to make sure that there's a side of the crack that is facing the light source that's getting the light, and a side that isn't. Even though you've inverted the two major values that the crack is existing in between, dark and light, you still have to have a level of realism in there. You can't just trust that shortcut. Okay, so a little bit of the light source in there, just a touch. Nothing too major. A little bit of, this is where I start highlighting. So remember how light your color was before. This is why you should stay away from that, because you will eventually need that highlight for where it's really important. Stay mid-tone. Look at the value difference in this. Let's choose the darkest point and the lightest point. Barely any distance traveled, but look at all the form that's visible. You have to trust your edges, guys. That's all I can really say at this point. Okay, this top corner seems to be the most exposed, so I'm going to lighten that up and sharpen it. Okay, desaturate. Zoom out, and then the final thing I do is get the sharpen tool. Sharpen tool is my best friend. Instead of working, because the edges are so important, what the sharpen tool does, especially on grayscale, it's very efficient. Color, sometimes it brings in a bit of a noise, a colorful noise, like pixelated noise. But the res is really low on this thing I'm critiquing, but I hope it's doing the job right. So it's getting the noise anyway. Okay. I'm just going to desaturate the noise away, if there was any, and sharpen just a touch more. This beautiful angled brush is just my life. I love it. There's a lot of brushes, excuse me, a lot of brushes like this out there. Take your time on spending your brush, spend some time on figuring out which brushes you like. Sometimes I sit there for hours. Sometimes I spend weeks finding brushes and organizing my brush set, brush by brush. This whole thing, I went through each and every single brush individually, and sort of grouped them up into foliage brushes, or depending on the kind of commissions I get. I also have another set for basic stuff. I have another set for skin. If you spend time into really working on your tools won't fail you, because you'll know your tools inside and out, and then you'll just love them. So there shouldn't be that much contrast. Let me just back up a little bit, because remember, contrast is only there when you're close to the light source. Where the light source is, that's where the contrast is. So maybe I should have just introduced a little bit of light at the top here. There we go. And that's pretty much it. That's all I really go through when I do these form studies. A little bit of editing here and there afterwards, but you know, if I go to any of my paintings, I'll want to edit something and change something. But that's it. It's all about your edges. Your edges are the most important things. Form in grayscale, so forget about color for a second. In grayscale, so we're moving the hue. Grayscale equals negative hue. There's no hue in here. There's the hue is the identity of the color, so it's the difference between green and blue. The hue is, that's what it is. Grayscale is the amount of light. In a color. More light means higher the grayscale goes. Form in grayscale is a combination of edges, finite light source, or not finite, defined light source. Let me just write this normally, like a normal human being. Okay, and shadows or shading. When you have your edges, it means in your mind you've already established the shape. You've used lines. You can use lines. The way I replace the line work, though, with my lasso tool. I replace it with the lasso tool. This is my line stage when I use the lasso tool. When I get into this is my line stage. That's me. because I like to keep that line there. It's easy for me to maintain a consistent look. It's easy to maintain the defined edges, which I absolutely need to make sure this shape is real. So these edges are essential because they replace lines. And if you have lines, you have the shape. When you don't have lines, you have to have everything else. So it's the lasso tool, the edges. Don't use lines, go for the lasso tool, try it out. Defined light source, meaning that light has to be there, it has to be consistent, and I have to identify it in the image. You should just do a small signal for it. Again, for me, I just imagine it in my mind because I spent a long enough time identifying it that it's ingrained in my thinking process. But for now, if you guys aren't used to this whole process of form studies, just draw it on your canvas so you don't forget it, because you can't do form studies if you don't know where your light source is. Period. That's it. If you're going to try to take a shortcut and think you can do it, you're going to fail. I'm sorry. You have to find out where your light source is. Things are visible because of a light source. Shadows are cast because of a light source. And the shading, of course, is a reaction to this light source. It's the next step. After you identify your light source, this is where the shading comes in. Find the core shadow, which is the main shadow cast by the light, which is in this entire side. And we know where this is because of the edges that we found. So this whole thing is an edge, separating the light source or the light from the shadow. And this edge is defining the parameter. This edge is needed. And so when you have those two, you're going to have a shape automatically. Okay? And that's pretty much how I do these light studies. I'm going to save this and send it back to the person who sent it to me. Thank you for trying this study. It's great. I really recommend you continue it. It's going to change the way you work with mechs, draw technical drawings, architectural drawings. It's even going to change the way you think about the human body, because you're always going to anticipate where the light source is, the reaction to the light source, and the edges needed to keep that light source, keep that form present. So before, you didn't have any defined edges, you didn't have a defined core shadow. You were sculpting before before you even had a basic core shadow established. You were using the cracks on the drawing to provide more form. It really didn't do that. The cracks come at the very end and after. Before, and your contrast was way too high. Your light was too light and your dark was too dark. Easy on the contrast. Keep the contrast low. Keep contrast low. Okay, and that's it really. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions, please ask below. I will try to do more of these individual critiques. I usually do them all at the very end, or a critique session via live stream, but lately I haven't had time to do a 2 or 3 hour live stream. It's only these small critiques that I have time for. I need to give my YouTube followers some attention as well. Thank you everyone for subscribing and for supporting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to be saying that a lot more nowadays. Forgive me. And please do share with your friends. Share these around. This information is available for everyone. I like to think that the art community needs to be more open with each other, because the true artists sprout out of areas where I think it's a really introverted process being an artist, and it's hard for an artist to step out of that shell and say, come help me. The best thing that we can do is provide the art out there so that those artists that are waiting in the diamonds in the rough can have an opportunity to learn and really start delivering their message through the art. And you can't deliver an efficient message without knowing some rules of rhetoric or public speaking. So try to share it with your friends that won't admit that they need help, or friends that don't like it when someone is critiquing their work. Show them some videos so they can start teaching themselves. I mean, it's not always necessary for someone to be there bothering you and telling you this is wrong, this is wrong. Sometimes the way a person learns is by themselves, and these videos can help them. It'll be like, nothing is too invasive into their learning process. If they're introverted, it's good, and it can work. It has its own way of working. And that's how I started learning. I didn't even read many art books because I felt like they were intruding into what I was learning, and I learned everything on my own. I like to do things on my own. It's funny because I ended up being an art instructor, and I'll try to invite people to come in and do the opposite of what I did. But all in all, I hope these help everyone. Don't forget to share it. And have a great day, guys. Bye bye.